Okay, thank you, Chairman. The meeting is now live streaming.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to Brecon Council's virtual planning committee meeting for today, the 1st of September 2020. This meeting will be live streamed on the council's social media channels and will be recorded. Once you join the meeting, please remain on mute, which avoids any unnecessary background noise disturbing the meeting. Controls to mute and unmute are displayed on your screen. When Julie Britton, Democratic Service Officer, takes the roll call to confirm the attendance, could you please ensure that you unmute your microphone before speaking to confirm attendance, and then mute your microphone as no response will assume that a planning committee member is not in the meeting. Each application has an allotted time slot. There may be an occasion when the time runs over and therefore attendees will remain in the waiting room until such time their application is ready to be heard. If for any reason the discussion finishes earlier than the time slot given, the meeting will be paused. I will work through the agenda, inviting the ward member, applicant, etc. to introduce and speak on each item as appropriate. Attendees for each application will be held in the waiting room until such time that application is heard. Ward members in attendance who have registered to speak on an application will be asked to speak last. A speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes, or in the case of more than one objector or supporter wishing to speak, up to a maximum of 3 minutes in total will need to be shared. Where an applicant and their agent intend to speak, the 3 minutes is split between the two. Other than when speaking, speakers will remain on mute. If you try to speak when not invited to, you may be required to leave the meeting. I will then check with the Democratic Services Officer in attendance if there are any members who wish to ask a question. Please do this by clearly raising your hand, and please remain on mute until invited to speak. I will seek declarations of interest in the usual manner. Members with a declaration should indicate this by raising their hand. The Democratic Services Officer in attendance will invite the councillor to unmute and declare their interest to the chairman. This councillor will, at the relevant time, be removed from the meeting and placed in the virtual waiting room until discussion and voting on that item has completed, after which they will return to the meeting. Once the application has been discussed and all questions answered, I will ask for a proposer and a seconder. This again should be done by raising your hand. The Democratic Service Officer will then invite each councillor to speak in turn. If any member should experience IT issues during the presentation and does not ask for it to be repeated, they will be unable to vote on the application. For each item, all members will need to confirm that they have heard the application in full before the vote is taken. A roll call will be given for each member to cast their vote, either for, against, or abstain. Please can I remind members that they will need to unmute themselves when responding. I will now introduce my team for the day. I have Rebecca Collins, my right-hand woman, who is Head of Development Management. We also have Mike Horn, Solicitor to the Council. Becky Harris, who is our Technical Support Officer. Naomi Minto, Development Management Planner. Chris Hobson is Principal Planning Officer. Andy Darcy is our Planning Policy Manager. Joining us later will be Hugh Coggles, our Tree and Countryside Officer. And we also have Julie Britton and Teresa Smith, Democratic Services Officer and Team Leader. So that's my team for today. I'll now ask Julie if she will just do the roll call for members, please. You're still on.
Councillor Wilkin.
I'm here.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Here.
Councillor Attewell.
Here.
Councillor Bowes.
Here.
Councillor Brame. Councillor Chapman Allen.
Sorry, present.
Councillor Clark.
Here.
Councillor Crane. Councillor Dale.
Here.
Councillor Digan.
Here.
Councillor Gilbert.
Here.
And Councillor Martin.
Here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Following on the agenda, Councillor
Chairman,
Kittle-Morris.
we have 2 substitutes who haven't been acknowledged.
Well, I was going to pick them up on our apologies and substitutions. Thank you. So item 1 is minutes. Can you put your hand up if you have any problems with me agreeing the minutes? No. Okay, so we'll agree those minutes, please. Julie, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So item 2, apologies and substitutions, Julie.
Chairman, we have 2 apologies from Councillor Roy Brame and Councillor Helen Crane, and their substitutes in attendance are Councillor Kittle-Morris and Councillor Kybird.
Thank you. Thank you for standing in, gentlemen. Item 3, declarations of interests and representations received. We will take them as each item is raised. Councillor Kybird, were you signalling?
I was only declaring interest on 9B Kilverston, as my company has carried out various infrastructure works in conjunction with that development. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take that as the item is raised. Thank you. I have no announcements to make, so that's item 4 covered. Item 5, do we have any requests to defer any items on this agenda? Rebecca?
No request, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any items of urgent business, please? Councillor Attewell.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to bring to your attention that I had asked the Director of Place, Rob Walker, and Simon Wood to confirm if we actually have a system of actively monitoring planning conditions that we impose on applications. And they responded in writing to me that there is no such system in place. We don't monitor planning applications. At the moment, I think we're just relying on members of the public to basically pull things up if they think that there's something that's not been done in accordance with the application. I've subsequently had a meeting with Mr. Walker and Mr. Wood virtually to see what could be done to try and engage with local communities to make them more aware of planning conditions on applications in their communities that affect them. And they've assured me that they're going to go away and have a look at that. They tell me that they're under no obligation to actively monitor planning conditions, to which I've said, well, we're imposing them. Surely somebody somewhere must be looking at these to, if not, what's the point in putting conditions in if we're not checking that things have been done as this committee would want? So they've taken that on board, and they're going to come back to me to see whether we can do something to, I suppose, really communicate better with the local communities when there's a significant application in their village, so they're aware of the conditions. And also, I was made aware that really reading the planning policy guidance, we should be trying to minimise the amount of conditions that we put on applications, particularly ones where they're pre-construction conditions. We need to try and get the applicants to do as much of that work up front if possible. So again, that was all part of that discussion, and I just wanted members to be aware of that. I was just concerned about planning conditions. I think, that's something that we should really be looking at. So just opening that up and letting everybody know on the planning committee that I've had that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've got some quite valid and intelligent points there. I'm at a loss that I've been left out of this conversation until now. This is probably not the right platform for us to be discussing it, but I will be having words with Mr. Wood and Rob as well. Councillor Attewell.
In fairness to you, Chairman, Mr. Walker was responding to a question that I raised, I think, at the last cabinet meeting. So he emailed me, then I raised further concerns. So I've had that meeting with himself and Mr. Wood. I'm happy to make all the correspondence available to everybody on the committee if they want.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll have further discussions on this another time. Thank you very much. So I'm going to move on to item 7. We have a local plan update, and over to you, Andy Darcy, please.
Thank you. Yes, this will be, I'll keep it very brief. As committee members will be aware, in August, the government published its white paper that sets out far-reaching proposals to reform the planning system. The proposals, if implemented, have wide-reaching implications for both the content of local plans, and in particular our local plan review, as well as the timetable and the process for its preparation. Following the publication of these consultation papers and further announcements from the government as to on which changes it intends to bring forward into regulation and legislation, the council has put the local plan review on hold, and the work of the local plan working group has therefore also been paused. Furthermore, the council has written to the minister seeking urgent advice on whether or not it is prudent to continue with the local plan review as set out in the agreed local development scheme, and is also seeking urgent clarification as to the implications of the proposals and the timetable for implementation on the review, and in particular the implications for the requirements set out under policy INFO2 of the adopted local plan. A full briefing on the white paper and the proposed changes is scheduled for members in a couple of weeks' time later in September. So I won't go through the whole paper now, but that's the local plan update, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. Can I just ask, when you said local plan, are you also referring to the local neighbourhood plans?
No, this
within
is
that?
no neighbourhood plans are still under the control and the preparation of parish and town councils. We're looking at, from a Breckland perspective, specifically at our own local plan.
But can you comment on the fact that the neighbourhood plans may be affected by the new white paper?
They may be. There isn't a great deal of information in the white paper specifically on neighbourhood plans. It's more to do with local plans, development management, section 106s and issues that are the responsibility of the local planning authority. However, clearly, depending on which of the proposals are taken forward by the government, then they will have implications for local neighbourhoods and neighbourhood planning moving forward, because the nature of the local plan will look different.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Atwill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask Andy, the council, I assume, will issue a formal response to the white paper. What's the vehicle for doing that? Does that come from this committee or full council? How do you envisage that working?
I'm not sure of the actual process yet as to which it would go through. There is an informal briefing in a couple of weeks' time, and following that, the council will be making a formal response. But I'm not sure of the vehicle in terms of which committee that will go through. But it will be publicised in the usual way when that decision is made.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions on that item? Thank you, Andy, for that. So we move on to our agenda, and item 8 on the agenda is deferred items. And we will take a deferred item today, which is item 8A at Banham, which is 3PL 2019-1408/F. And we have our guest today, we have Kevin Whitefield, who's the applicant, to answer questions only. I can see you there. And also we've got Councillor Stephen Askew, who's the ward rep. has joined us as well. I can see as well. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitefield, if you had to wait through our general housekeeping, but we have to get it out of the way. So our officer on this one is Naomi Minto. I can see Naomi as well. Over to you, please, Naomi.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. Just bear with me one moment. Oh, is that the wrong? Have you got the, can you see the committee presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So the application seeks consent for the change of use of the land from a small holding to leisure facility comprising 4 detached 2-bedroom eco holiday lodges and a natural swimming pool. Access to the site would be via new access off Heath Road to the east of the existing access, which would be closed if permission is granted. The application site is located on land previously used as a small holding to the north of Hilltop Cottage, Heath Road, Bannon. It is located outside of any defined settlement boundary. The site is rectangular in shape and covers an area of approximately 0.72 hectares on relatively level ground. There is a large pond to the west of the site with its own island covered in trees and shrubs, and a redundant agricultural barn adjacent to it. Further to the east are the remnants of polytunnels used in connection with the previous small holding use and a water borehole. The site is bordered by trees and established hedgerows. To the north, east and west of the site is open agricultural land, whilst to the south and southeast is a built development comprising of a mixture of residential and commercial uses along Heath Road. The commercial uses include a Land Rover restoration business, a renewable energy installation business, a furniture and interior specialist, and storage units. I'll just run through the slides. So this shows the application site in relation to the wider context. This is the site in relation to the settlement boundary there to the left. This is the location plan and the proposed site plan. You see the 4 eco lodges to the north there. There's over 30 metres distance from the proposed lodges to the existing light industrial estate to the south. And you can see also the existing access, which would be closed up and would form part of a condition to be closed up if approval was given. This is a visual perspective of how the site would look. And the elevations, floor plan and section. These are the site photos. These are the views along Heath Road and looking east along Heath Road, looking west along Heath Road. And again, these are site photos. And back to the site plan. So in terms of the consultation, no objections have been raised from Bannon Parish Council. Norfolk County Council raised no objection following revisions to the application, which included a reduction in the number of proposed lodges from 6 to 4, and the provision of a new access to the east of the existing access to improve visibility displays, with the closure of the existing small holding access. Whilst the required visibility displays could still not be met, the Highways Authority considered that, on balance, the benefits of the improved visibility that would be afforded to the neighbouring industrial estate would outweigh their previous concerns relating to the shortfall of visibility to the west of the access of the application site. There were no objections from the Contaminated Land Officer or the Historic Environment Service or the Tree and Countryside Officer. In terms of ecology, the natural environment team initially raised no objection to the proposal. However, following the reconsultation in August, they requested an updated ecology report. This was received on Friday and they have now been reconsulted and we are awaiting their response. In terms of representations, we've received 2 letters of representation raising concerns with regards to highway safety, location, application details, and the limited demand for this type of facility. Following assessment of the application, the principle of development in this location is considered acceptable, acknowledging the uniqueness of the facilities proposed, which would provide a style of accommodation that is not widely offered in the district on land which already has existing structures on it to facilitate the previous use of the site as a small holding. In addition, it is acknowledged that the application complies with other policy requirements and would not have an adverse impact when considering design, character and appearance, amenity, tree and highway safety considerations. And subject to the natural environment team confirming that they are satisfied with the updated ecology report, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. There is a supplementary which is submitted in support of this, which provides additional information regarding the ecology comments. And just also to draw members' attention to condition 9, there was a word missing where it says prior to the first occupation of the development hereby permitted, the vehicular shall be constructed in accordance with a detailed scheme. It should actually read the vehicular access. So if members were minded to approve the application, it would be recommended to add in that word access onto condition 9. And that's it from me. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We've got Kevin Whitefield who's here to answer questions, which will follow on. So could I have Councillor Stephen Askew, please? You have 3 minutes, sir. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. You could try sign language, but I'm not sure anyone will be able to follow it. No, I still can't. Am I the only one who can't hear, Councillor Askew?
Chairman, if I may, he might have more success if he turns the video off and just relies on audio to speak. Sometimes that helps with the bandwidth.
Do you want to try that, Steve? Because we can't hear a word. Turn your video off. Turn your video off so we can't see you.
Becky, has Councillor Askew submitted a statement in advance?
Not that I have received, no.
Councillor Askew, you might be better to log off and try logging back in again, all right? And we'll wait for you.
Still not hearing you.
Chairman, I can actually, stop. Oh, he has stopped his video. That's okay. He's done it.
But we still can't hear anything. Still can't hear you, Steve.
It's going to be an issue with the microphone connection. You need to log off completely, come out of the meeting and then rejoin us.
I think he's gone.
Could I
Becky?
just add, whilst we're waiting for him to log back in?
I don't think you should add anything until Councillor Askew's here if he's speaking, Naomi.
Okay.
Because he needs the opportunity to be able to hear what you've going to add.
Yeah, okay.
Apologies. Becky, what I was going to say is my understanding is Councillor Askew speaking in support of the application.
I believe so, yeah.
And we're recommending the application for approval, Chairman, just to make you aware.
Thank you.
We do have Mr. Whitefield. Obviously, I know he hasn't prepared anything per se, but he is here for questions as well.
Chairman, I've just sent Councillor Askew the Zoom invite again, just in case he couldn't find it. So.
Yeah. Actually, when because my emails are playing up, as soon as I get an email for any meeting, I take a photo on my phone. So it might be from other members probably want to consider that. Just take a picture of it and leave it on your phone and go back to them a few weeks later and clear all the old ones off. Because sometimes I go back to them and I can't find that email. A couple of times happened to me and I'd have to contact Rebecca just to ask her what the meeting number was, or Becky. So there's a little hint for any of you who may be having difficulties finding a meeting reference. I think we could have probably done a site visit in this time, but never mind.
Mike, obviously you're happy to give it a bit longer for Councillor Askew, but like I said, he is speaking in support of the application, which is recommended for approval. And the protocol does say that in the event that speakers can't speak, we will continue to proceed with the application. That's why we ask for written statements in advance. So I'm happy obviously to give it a few more minutes, but the protocol does say that we can continue with an application. Even if the speakers are unable to speak, if you're happy in that regard, Mike.
Thanks, Becky. Yes, noted and agreed. We are sure, are we, that Councillor Askew was going to speak in support? Yeah. I think we wait a bit, as you suggested, and then carry on.
Okay, well, I think the difference will be is if the members have any questions at all at this stage. Okay, I've got Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark will have a question. Someone's just messaged to ask if Mr. Whitefield wishes to speak. Mr. Whitefield, do you wish to speak at all? You need to unmute yourself, sir. Yeah.
No, I don't wish to speak, but if you need anything at all, I'm very happy to answer any questions.
That's fine, thanks. Councillor Clark, I'll take your question, but I will just guard it slightly because we may have to repeat it when Councillor Askew returns. I'll take your question, please, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. From what I've heard and read, I'm minded to support the application. I just note that whilst Banham Parish Council haven't made an objection as such, they had a couple of concerns about narrowness of the road, but also whether it's possible for any formal passing places to be created. So that's a question both for the applicant and also to Naomi, whether that issue had been managed to be accommodated or not. It doesn't seem to be a major issue, Chairman.
I'll hand over to Naomi to respond to that, but I don't believe Highways raised that as an issue. Naomi, are you with regards to passing bays?
No, it wasn't raised as an issue from the Highways perspective. They were concerned with the visibility displays initially, but that was resolved via a relocated access, and following that revised access. They raised no objection, subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's what I thought the case was. Do we have any further questions at all? No. Okay. Mr. Horn, I'm prepared to take this as to the vote, I think, because I'm sure, as we've been told in the past, some people speak and then ruin the case for themselves anyway. Rebecca, please.
It's just that I stopped
Rebecca.
Naomi adding her point just while we were waiting for Councillor Askew, but if we're not waiting, she may want to add her additional point.
Okay. Needs to be really interesting though, Naomi.
I'm really sorry, it's really not. It was just that in the slides that I showed.
Sorry, Chairman, Steve Askew's now arrived, so I'll let him in.
Okay. Steve, good to have you with us.
Unbelievable, Chairman. Unbelievable, Chairman. Yes, yes, if you can hear me.
Well, listen, we moved forward a little bit. We had a question with regards to an item raised by Banham Parish Council with regards to passing bays, which is not something that was a problem with highways. So we've settled that one. Naomi just wishes to add another item, and then I think it would be best just to hear your statement. Naomi, could you just do your piece and we'll move on, please?
I can, yes. With regards to the slides I showed the proposed layout and floor plans, and I showed a slide for a 1-bedroom lodge, but I just wanted to make it clear this is for 4 2-bedroom lodges, not the 1-bedroom. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Steve, we'll hear your bit. You have 3 minutes, please.
Well, just bear with me, Chairman, because the whole lot has gone. I've just got to get my outlook back up, which I have. Can you hear me now, ladies and gentlemen? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, good. Okay, bear with me then. So good afternoon, members. I'm sorry about all the hassle. Anyway, the application in front of you, following my request at panel to scrutinise the then Highways recommendation, which I was at odds with. Panel members will recall I requested this application to come to committee because I believed there to be some grounds to challenge the then Highways comments. Since then, as you've heard, following further work, Highways have withdrawn their objection, which in turn has led the planning officer to recommend approval now all criteria have been met. The applicant has liaised with officers every step of the way for a considerable period to bring this exciting project to fruition in an ideal location. And now that officers are content that the necessary criteria have been met, I would like to thank them for their positive approach to encouraging tourism to the district. Breckland has much to offer visitors to the district, and here is an innovative example of the means to facilitate the Breckland experience. Members will have the details of the project in the report, and now that the only initial obstacle has been resolved prior to this meeting, I very much hope that you will support the officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Sorry about all the aggro you've experienced.
No worries.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on and we'll take the vote so we can move on to the next item. But can I first of all confirm that all members have heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Could I have just a thumbs up, please, visually, that you've all heard? Yes, I can see you there and you there. Yes, thank you. Everyone seems to have heard. Julie, could I hand over to you to do a roll call for the vote, please? Because your officer's recommendation on this is one of approval. So could I have an approval that you agree with, please? Julie?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Attewell?
4.
Councillor Bowes?
4.
Councillor Chapman-Allen? Councillor Chapman-Allen?
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Clark?
4.
Councillor Dale?
4.
Councillor Digan?
4.
Councillor Gilbert?
4.
Councillor Martin?
4.
Councillor Kybird?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Kittle-Morris
For.
and Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. This item is approved. Thank you, Mr. Whitefield, for your patience, and thanks, Steve. We'll let you leave so we can move on to our next item, which is in Attleborough. We have Philip Taylor, the agent, who will be joining us. Becky needs to get. I've gone to screen, so I can't see if the gentleman is with us. Oh, Mr. Taylor, I can see you now. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, members, so this is item 3PL 2019-0717 at Attleborough, land north of Blackthorn Road. And this was won by Gemma, but Gemma can't be with us, so we're handing over to Rebecca Collins, please, for this one.
Okay. So we're in Attleborough. This is land north of Blackthorn Road in Attleborough for a development up to 18 dwellings. It's an outline planning application with all matters reserved. So the application site you can see in front of you, broadly outlined in red, is just off the slip road going on to the A11 to the north of Attleborough, indicated by the red line. You'll see just to the north of the site, we'll come on to in a minute, that there's an area of land which is outside the application site, which currently contains trees and a bund screening the slip road from the A11 from the application site. You can see here that the site lies outside the designated settlement boundary for Attleborough. You can see the red line there marks the settlement boundary for Attleborough, and the site lies just to the north of it. Development outside the settlement boundaries with regards to our towns, such as Attleborough, is judged in accordance with Policy Gen 05 of the local plan. Policy Gen 05 requires us to protect the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside, and the application has been assessed in this regard. You can also see that there is existing residential development to the south of the application site, and obviously the A11 to the north of the application site. This is the submitted red line plan submitted with the application site, showing the residential development of Blackthorn Road to the south and the application site to the north. Currently, this is a greenfield open site, currently grass with no public access. You will note from the Office of Reports that there is currently an appeal in for an adjacent site. This is the adjacent site. This is the appeal. It was for 85 dwellings. Members resolved to refuse planning permission for the development of this site based on it would impact the intrinsic beauty and the character of the landscape through development of a green wedge in between existing residential development and the A11 to the north. So this is the existing site, which was refused at planning committee, referenced in the report, and is currently undergoing an appeal. You'll note from, apologies before I move on, you'll note from the officer report that we consider that the sites aren't comparable, in that obviously this site for 85 dwellings is significantly larger than the application site for 18 dwellings. The site that we are referencing is located off the slip road and not parallel to the A11, so it won't have the same impact on development. And specifically in our appeal review, we've made reference to the bund, which is going to be required to screen this development. It's significant length and size, and I'll come on to the bund for the new development, but I previously mentioned there is one in existence. So here is the application site, the 18 dwellings. It is indicative. This is an indicative plan. All matters are reserved. However, we've had the application for a significant period of time while Environmental Health have had the opportunity to look at it to ensure that we could achieve a layout which wouldn't impact the amenity of future occupants from noise. It's considered that this type of layout, albeit still indicative, would be acceptable. You can see to the north of the existing proposed flats to the rear of the site, there is a 5-metre acoustic fence proposed directly to the north of those properties to protect them from noise. You can also see the gap in between this and the slip road and the A14 which will be a green buffer in between the site. And you can also see the existing bund right to the north, labelled bund just off the slip road, which will also help screen the development from that location in terms of noise and screening. And therefore, given the scale of the development proposals and that existing bund, then we think there was significantly less impact from this development than that previously refused at committee. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see section AA. This is obviously a section of the site to demonstrate how well screened the development will be from that slip road by the existing bund and the existing vegetation. There is also vegetation to the frontage of the site, and this is also covered in the officer report. I'll show you the access in a minute. Apologies. There is obviously screening to the frontage of the site, and this is covered in the officer report. The tree officer has been consulted. Again, this is indicative and the access points are indicative. The Highways Authority raises no objections to these indicative access points, but they would involve a removal of a significant row of hedgerow in order to allow for those access points and the visibility displays. However, that hedgerow has been assessed by our tree officer and is not considered significant, and therefore an adequate replacement hedgerow could be put in its place, and he raises no objection to the removal of hedgerow. He has raised concerns about the proximity of development to some of the trees to the north-east corner of the site. However, these are considered to be able to be resolved at reserve matter stage, and therefore no objection is raised by the tree officer to the development of this site as indicatively proposed. Again, there's no objection from the Highways Authority to the 2 access points shown on this map marked with arrows off Blackthorn Road into the site. It is considered that sufficient access and visibility can be achieved, albeit again indicatively shown on this plan. This is a topographical survey of the site. You'll also note from the officer report that there is some surface water flooding within the site. However, these are outside the areas of development shown, and it's considered that these can be adequately conditioned or recommended or dealt with in the reserve matters stage to ensure that there isn't additional significant risk of flooding, and therefore no objections are raised in that regard either. So here we just have some site photos showing the existing bund onto the A11 slip road and the existing vegetation. A lot of the vegetation, as outlined in the officer's report, is deciduous, but obviously a significant landscaping strategy could be agreed with any future application to ensure that we have evergreen trees there to help with some planting and to shield the development from that direction. Excuse me. Here's the view down Blackthorn Road, looking west down Blackthorn Road. And again, looking east towards the slip road. And east down Blackthorn Road across the frontage of the site. And up the slip road. So just back to the indicative block plan. Like I say, this is a significantly reduced site. The applicants have spent a significant amount of time working with environmental health to ensure we have adequate noise protection and mitigation, which is proposed and now agreed with them and can be adequately secured by condition. All matters are reserved, so that we would have later opportunity to revise the site layout. And there's a limited objection from statutory consultees. And on that basis, we've recommended this one for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have Philip Taylor, please, who's the agent. Mr. Taylor, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't quote at length from the case officer's very comprehensive committee report. Indeed, I believe that the overall tone and discussion of the key planning issues provides a really robust assessment and leads to a clear conclusion that the site is an acceptable location for new residential development. Importantly, this is a modest development proposal that can deliver new housing with a mix of types, sizes and tenures to meet local needs, and crucially to deliver 25% as affordable housing. Other enhancements of note include works to improve surface water management of the site, enhance biodiversity, including new planting, improved wildlife habitats within the green buffer, and improved acoustic protection from residential noise generated by the A11. And as a quick point of clarification from the officer's presentation, just to note that they showed the acoustic fencing immediately at the rear of the flats. That's actually a 2.1 metre acoustic fence. If you look at the section at the bottom of that plan, The 5 metre acoustic fence is actually on the north side of the green buffer, and that's where the sort of the most robust acoustic buffer, acoustic fencing would be located. It's also worth stating that the applicant has the means and track record to deliver this scheme quickly and to a very high standard, all to help contribute to the council's housing delivery targets. And we're very much aware of the recent planning and appeal history of the site next door. And to the west, and have read with interest the landscape assessment section of this committee report, which has been drafted with reference to that appeal. However, I think it's important to stress that the differences to that refused scheme, with particular reference to the impact on landscape and character on the countryside. And in our view, our scheme, as a much smaller and more modest scale of development, poses substantially less harm to the local landscape. And this is based on its infill nature. And by that, we mean its enclosure to the north by the embanked slip road, and to the east by the roads at an A11 junction, and to the south by the existing housing development on the south side of Blackthorn Road. And furthermore, owing to our scheme only seeking partial development of the whole site, effectively the southern half, a robust green buffer to the A11 will be maintained and can be further reinforced with planting and careful landscaping to enhance the landscape and biodiversity of the site. And as such, in assessing the landscape impacts of the proposals, a careful balance of these benefits and harms must be struck. And this involves weighing up the small increase in urbanisation and infill at the edge of the settlement against the modest scale of the proposals and its sustainable development credentials that deliver a mix of new housing, including affordable units. So in conclusion, it was considered that this planning balance indicates that the harms to the intrinsic beauty of the local countryside were not substantial, and that would not in themselves warrant refusal of the planning application. I hope you can support our proposal and sanction the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. It's open to questions from members. Any members got questions at all? Councillor Attawell, Councillor Kiddle-Morris, Councillor Gilbert, and then Councillor Kybird. Thank you. And then Councillor Clark at the end. Councillor Attawell, you first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Might want some clarification from Mike Horn on this, but looking at this previous application, which we refused, 3PL 2019-0275, we refused that on policy Gen 05 and ENV 05. If we did anything other than refuse this application, because to my mind, exactly the same criteria holds, are we inadvertently prejudicing the appeal with the inspector? Because if we give permission for this, that might be used as a stick to beat us with, bearing in mind we've already refused an application for much larger development. The idea was, I believe, when we talked about the previous application, was the green buffer between the existing housing that's there and the A11, and members were minded at the time to try and protect that, which is why we refused the application. I just think you remember that one coming to committee. I think if we give permission for this, we're kind of leaving ourselves open for the planning inspector to say, well, they've given permission for the one next door. I think we need to be consistent. So I'd just like to make that point, and I'd be interested if Mike Horn's got any view on that, really. Thank you.
Becky, can I ask for your views initially, because I don't think they are quite the same applications. So let's hear from Becky and I'll come in afterwards.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. So each case needs to be considered on its own merits, members. As previously set out, the adjacent site was for 85 dwellings. This is for 18. The land, I can get the slide up again, but the land take is significantly more on the 85 dwellings, which you've refused. Obviously, neighbouring applications are material planning considerations. So we've spelled out in the officer report that it is a material consideration that you refused the previous application, the adjacent application at appeal. You refused the application at committee and it's going to appeal. So it is a material consideration that you need to be aware of, although we think it has limited weight because the scale of the proposals is significantly different. The landscape impacts are significantly different, one down to the scale and two down to the bund which is required to run the entire length of the A11. Also the visibility, because the bund is adjacent to the A11 and at the same level of the A11. So the visibility for that site and the bund and the amount of development significantly changes it. So we think each case on its own merits. This is a much smaller site, this is a much reduced proposal, and there's a much more green space within the site, and it's set at a lower level than the A11. Therefore, we think there are material differences. And if the inspector of the adjacent site wanted clarification on that, we will be able to provide those, and they're set out in the committee report.
So to clarify, Chairman, my legal response to Councillor Attewell would be, yes, absolutely, he would be completely right without the distinctions that Rebecca has just been through.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My only question is the bund and the associated vegetation in the control of the applicant? Because if that belongs to Highways England as the owners of the A11, then perhaps in some future amendments to the A11, it might be removed.
Philip might want to add to this, Chairman, if you'll allow him, because obviously I'm taking over from Gemma at the last minute. So I'm just, but there's two bunds, Councillor. So there's the bund that the applicants are proposing, which we're able to condition and obviously enforce via that condition that it is retained. There's an existing bund which forms part of the existing noise mitigation for the A11, which was put in when the A11 was put in.
Mr. Taylor?
I could also add, yeah, I mean, the red line plan shows the extent of the application site and what is under control by the applicant. And that fully encompasses the green buffer zone that's shown on the block plan to the north of the flats, including the swale. And that includes parts of the existing planting that was visible on the photographs that was part of the presentation. There is obviously a strip of highways land beyond the application site, which is next to the slip road for the A11. But we aren't forming any part of or proposing anything on that strip of land.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Very much the same as what Councillor Attewell has said. Am I right in thinking that the settlement boundary for Attleborough was drawn so as to have a green buffer between the existing development and the A11? So therefore what we are doing is looking to build on the buffer that was put there to mitigate the A11 from the existing development. And surely if this development was approved, then surely that is going to very much weaken, or in fact I would say totally nullify any grounds we have at the appeal. So I really cannot see why this is being recommended for approval.
Rebecca, please.
Can I just take this opportunity, Chairman, to remind councillors that there's no policies which require that to be a green buffer or protecting it as a green site in other ways. Your policy is Gen 05, which is to seek to protect the intrinsic beauty and the character of the countryside. Members are perfectly within their right to consider that that does have significant landscape value and that development in that location would affect the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside. But I would err on the side of caution, members, if you're going to call it a green buffer that needs protecting in that way, because our policies don't protect it in that manner at this time.
Thank you for that response. Councillor Kybird, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The site appeared to show some degree of watercourse flooding, and there's proposal to have a detailed flood risk assessment. In view of the fact that we recently had 150 millimetres in 6 hours in the locality, or within 5 miles, can we put that in perspective of what is proposed? Perhaps the applicant can comment.
Councillor Taylor, you've been requested to comment on the flooding issues.
Yes, so I mean, absolutely. We did undertake drainage survey, drainage strategy work to accompany the application, and that had been reviewed by the local drainage board, and they asked us to do some bore borehole sort of analysis on the site to make sure that the site could be capable of draining correctly, and to understand that sort of the geology there. And that was all submitted to the drainage board, and they've said there is no objection to that in principle. And we're looking to obviously include sustainable urban drainage systems to try and mitigate surface water management of the site. And hence we've also tried to keep the actual developable part of the site on the southern edge of the site, which is outside of the areas which the Environment Agency have noted as being possibly susceptible to surface water flooding. So we've done everything we can to try and pull the development away from those vulnerable areas, and to make sure that the land and the development itself can actually mitigate for sort of increases in any surface water runoff issues.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I've got Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. This is a question for Rebecca. I may have missed some. I know he's on page 30 in terms of the responses under NHS England, Midlands and East. They talk about the impact on healthcare provision and said the proposed development must therefore, in order to be considered, talked about this appropriate levels of mitigation, but I can't see, whilst there are other contributions being made, you know, such as affordable housing, about 4 houses, etc., 25%. I can't see a request there from NHS England or officer response to the question they've raised there. So we're grateful for a response or view on that, please. Thank you.
Can you carry on with questions, Chairman, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Clark. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Martin, please.
Oh,
question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, I mean, there's been an understanding that since the bypass was done, that area from the beginning of Blackthorn through Carvers Lane as far as Westgore Road would be a balancing act or green area going through. All right, I know things move on. And the other point I wanted to just raise was, I don't think I misheard, but the agent said that they got to put an acoustic fence up, which is 5 metres tall. Well, that's going to be over 16 foot tall. Well, how bland has that got to look? Perhaps he could just answer why they're doing that. I'd rather see a green area on it anyway. Thank you.
Okay.
I did mention in my earlier sort of presentation, the 5 metre fence is probably best seen on the section drawing that is at the bottom of the master plan document, and it shows the 5 metre acoustic fence is on the north side of the main part of the green bund or buffer, and then you have the buffer as it comes closer to the housing, and then around the actual curtilage of the houses and the flats, there's a smaller 2 metre fence. So the 5 metre fence isn't right on the doorstep of the houses. It's designed to be at the closest point to the A11 to have the greatest effect. Again, on the applicant's land, and then in combination with the planting and existing trees in the green buffer, you have further acoustic protections as you come closer to the back of the flatted buildings, and then there's a smaller, more sort of domestic scale acoustic fence that surrounds the back of those properties.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca, are you ready to respond?
I can't find the NHS comments directly on the file. So what I would be minded to recommend is what I'd be minded to do if you're in agreement, Chairman, is update the recommendation in that if it was to gain planning approval, that we reconsult with NHS England with regards to any potential contribution they may require. However, at 18 their threshold for consultation is usually 50 dwellings. So it is unlikely that we'd be able to require a contribution below 50 dwellings. That is their standard procedures, not ours, I would hasten to add. And therefore it's unlikely that we require a contribution, but I'm happy to update any subsequent recommendation to subsequent consultation with theirs, Chairman.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say the number seems low, but I didn't know it was 50. But anyway, thanks anyway. No further questions then from members. I'm looking at you all. No, thank you. So with that, Can I confirm that all members have heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Just show me your thumbs, please. So I can see you all. Yes, you all have then. Okay, thank you. So your officer recommendation on this one is one of approval. So Julie, can you take the roll call on approval, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Atterwill,
Against.
Councillor Bowes,
Against.
Councillor Marion Chapman-Allen,
For.
Councillor Harry Clark,
Against.
Councillor Vera Dale,
Against.
Councillor Philip Dygan,
For.
Councillor Keith Gilbert,
Against.
Councillor Keith Martin,
Against.
Councillor Robert Kybird,
Against.
Councillor Mark Kiddle-Morris,
For.
and Councillor Peter Wilkinson.
For the approval.
That's a 4 for approval and 7 against the application.
Okay, so from you all, I think Councillor Attwell's going to do it for you. I need your reasonings to disagree with the officer's recommendation. Councillor Attwell, please, you look like you're keen to do this.
Chairman, thank you. Could I propose that the application is refused as it doesn't accord with policies Gen 05 and ENV 05 of the adopted local plan?
Okay then, do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Gilbert seconded that. Mr. Horn, you looked like you were wanting to respond or not?
Can we just, whilst that is perfectly clear, indeed it couldn't be clearer, it would be helpful if we could have an explanation as to why it is concluded that those two policies are not complied with.
Councillor Attwell.
Chairman, for the sake of transparency, I think the wording needs to be exactly the same as the piece of land that we've refused next door, because we're given exactly the same reasons, and we did object or refused it on that basis, on the two policy items that I've just prescribed. Now, it might be that Becky can help us there. If she looks up the wording for that other application, she'll be able to tell us exactly, she's got a hand up, exactly what that said, and she may come to my rescue.
Rebecca?
If you'll allow me, am I on mute? No, if you'll allow me. And the policy wording of Gen 05, which we carried over for the adjacent site, was that the development would impact the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside.
Okay, are you happy with that, Mr. Horn?
Yes,
Thank you.
I am. It is a legally understandable conclusion, though I must emphasize the answer that was given before in response to Councillor Atterwell's question, that these are two completely different sites. So as long as that is committee's assessment of this particular application on its own and on its own merits, regardless of the previous reason for refusal on the different application, then that is a satisfactory conclusion and resolution for committee to draw.
Thank you. Councillor Attwell, briefly, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, take all that on board from Mr. Horn. I did also say policy ENV 05, which is the policy that we're trying to protect the landscape of the district. Is valued for its benefit to the rural character, in the interest of biodiversity, geodiversity, and historic conservation. And it goes on and on regard to the character of the landscape. So I do think, yes, they are separate applications, but I think those two policies are good ones on which to refuse this application. So you have my proposal.
Thank you. Rebecca, wishing to come back?
Can I just clarify that we're just refusing it on character grounds, because you just mentioned biodiversity, etc., and that we have no objection from our statutory consultees in that regard. So I'm assuming that members are just referring to EMVO5, and I had already written that down in terms of the character elements of that policy, Chairman.
Chairman, I can confirm that as part of my proposal. Yes, we're looking at landscape character.
Thank you. Okay, members, a proposal from the floor to refuse this item from Councillor Attwell, seconded by Councillor Gilbert. So, Julie, could we have a roll call, please, for refusal?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Attwell?
For.
Councillor Bowes?
For refusal.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
Against.
Councillor Harry Clark?
For refusal.
Councillor Dale?
For refusal.
Councillor Philip Dygan?
Against.
Councillor Keith Gilbert?
For the refusal.
Councillor Keith Martin?
For the refusal.
Councillor Robert Kybird?
For the refusal.
And Councillor Kiddle Morris?
Against the recommendation.
And Councillor Peter Wilkinson?
Against the recommendation.
Just to make it clear, it's not a recommendation. You both meant against the proposal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Agreed.
4-7.
Yeah, that's what I make it. Sorry,
Okay,
Chair.
thank
I'm
you.
still adding up.
Thank you for this item at Attleborough. It is earmarked as a refusal from the members. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, we're going to move on to Kilverstone. We have the agent to join us from the waiting room. This one for Kilverstone is 3PL 2020-0674/F. We have Mr. Parker joining us. Good afternoon, Jason. Good to see you. And thank you. And the officer for this one is Chris Hobson. We have Councillor Kybird. What would you wish to add?
Just to say that I'm declaring a potential pecuniary interest in respect of the development generally. Thank you.
Can I come in, please? You said potential and pecuniary.
My company has been involved with various infrastructure developments in association with the King's Fleet development, and therefore I consider that we could potentially benefit from this development.
So obviously the term pecuniary doesn't exist any longer.
Right.
I was interested. So can I take it, and this is an open question, so please don't take it as otherwise, that you're declaring a personal and prejudicial interest?
Yes, indeed.
And therefore you're not going to take part in the discussion or vote?
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Rebecca?
I think we say in the protocol that if that's the case, we'll put that councillor in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Apologies, Councillor Kybird.
Okay.
Can you pick him up, Julie, and throw him out, please? Okay, thank you very much. Over to Chris Hobson. Oh, I can see you. For the presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Is the presentation showing up? Yes, so here we have item 9B. Hello?
You hold. We have a presentation up. Are you doing this, Becky, or?
No, it's
Who's
myself.
putting this presentation up? There we are. We're okay now.
Yeah,
it's on its way. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Apologies, members. So here we have item 9B. So it's Kilverston. It's an application at 9C of the main report. Apologies, 9B. We have an application here with you that's before you because the application is made on behalf of Brecon Council. It's made by Balfour Beatty and it's on behalf of the council. In terms of the recommendation within the main report, we've got a couple of updates there in the supplementary report. So we've had additional comments from the tree officer raising no objections, and the recommendations updated accordingly, but also to reflect a administrative error. Kilverston Parish Council weren't consulted, so they have been, and we're awaiting their comments. So the recommendation, just to be clear, is for approval subject to no objections or adverse comments being received. So in terms of the application before you, it's shown by the red circle there, just south of the A11. It's a full application for a new 21 MVA electric substation. It also includes temporary compound area around there. So in the area where my arrow is just now, there's the proposed substation. It also includes an approximate 800-metre length cable route to be laid just due east of the Norwich Road, and then further entering the Norwich Road at this point here. In terms of site context, so here we can see the bulk of Thetford town here. The locations, say, just south of the A11. We've got the Norwich Road, then links into the town. Kilverston Road to the south. You can see a rural location, sits within a large arable field, and tree belts along its edges and in the broader area. This is the site in relation to the permitted Thetford Zoo. So here we have the circular dot. It's, as you can see there, the zoo will over time, as it's brought forward, be built in and around this site. So here we can see the existing built form. In this area we have phase 1A that's under construction at the moment. As you can see, it will be brought forward northwards over time. In terms of the site, so that's the existing access, so the proposals are to widen this. There will be some tree loss. As I say, the tree officers reviewed that, and loss will be limited to low category trees and young trees within categories C and U. You can see the tree belt there along the Norwich Road frontage. So beyond that, it's a location of the substation, and that's the view back towards the A11 junction with Norwich Road. And that's the site itself. So that's looking towards the site of the substation with the Norwich Road running beyond those trees on the right-hand side of the image. And that's the view southwards. You can see the tree belt, the flat and open nature of the site. That's the corresponding view back northeast towards the site of the substation, and again further south back towards the site of the substation with the cable route laid in front of us heading northwards. In more detail, we can see the substation shown by the rectangle here, areas of temporary parking, storage for plant, site welfare offices. And there's the southern part of the cable route along the field and to where it adjoins the Norwich Road. We've got more detail on the substation. So relatively standard design developed by UK Power Networks with Balfour Beatty. We've got a transformer, two transformers, switch house, areas of hard standing for vehicles, and that's surrounded by a 2.5 metre metal fence with shingle area around that. And then we've got the elevations here, so you can see how it's going to appear. It's obviously relatively industrial and designed to reflect its use and function. So there we have those corresponding elevations, and that's that overall site plan. So in terms of the proposals, the application process, we've had no objections from Thetford Town Council. We're awaiting those from Kilverstone Parish Council, as mentioned. Otherwise, there's been no significant representations made from the local community. Through the application process, all consultees have provided comments and raised no objections. Proposals, as shown below, we'll see the Thetford Zoo over time be built and brought forward within the area to the south, all the way around it. So it'll be assimilated into the built form of the town as it grows. There's no significant objections or issues that can't be overcome via conditions with respect to highway safety, ecology, and trees. It's therefore recommended for approval, subject to those conditions updated in the supplementary report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, it's over to the agent, Jason Parker. Mr. Parker, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to speak today. I'll keep this really short and sweet. I thought Chris's presentation was really good. It gives a good oversight of exactly what is proposed here. So just to introduce myself, I'm Jason Parker of Parker Planning Services. I'm the agent. We've worked very closely with the planning officer and other stakeholders involved. This is a key and important proposal for Thetford and Breckland. It will provide essential electricity to the already planned properties and commercial premises which make up the Thetford urban extension. New Homes England, as well as the National Grid, have also been involved with this proposal.
You're going very faint, Mr. Parker. I'm not sure what's happening there.
Sorry, I'll try again. Let me know if it gets better. I'm just going to adjust the microphone.
I think it's when you lean back, Jason. You just need to lean forward.
Fine, I'll carry on leaning forward. So I'll just go backwards a little bit. So I'm Jason Parker. I'm the agent for the application. We've worked very closely with the planning officer and other stakeholders. This is a key and important proposal for Thetford and Breckland. It will provide essential electricity to the already planned properties and commercial premises which make up the Thetford urban extension. New Homes England, as well as the National Grid, have also been involved with the proposal. The location of the substation, as you have seen, is on land which is allocated for employment and commercial purposes. It will therefore be embedded within that. We therefore think this is the appropriate location for the site. Existing shrubbery and trees also helps to screen and soften the appearance of the proposal. The noise of the substation is really quite low. There isn't really any significant noise that generates from the substation, but we did a noise survey anyway, and the nearest residential properties are quite a distance away. With any development, there's of course initial construction traffic, but this will be of a temporary nature just for construction. And once it's operational, there's very limited traffic that's required just from a domestic sized vehicle or a van, and it's on a very irregular basis. Many specialist surveys have been conducted, including tree surveys, ecology, highways, noise, archaeology, all other surveys as well. And that's helped to support the proposal and inform the location of the site. We welcome the conclusions made in the officer's report and hope that you will support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. No questions. That's fine. Thank you. So can I confirm that all members have heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Thumbs up. Thank you. You've all heard that. That's terrific. So over to you, Julie, to take the roll call on this item at Kilverstone, 3PL 2020-0674, and the recommendation from the officers is one of approval. Oh, hang on. Rebecca, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, Chairman. Can I suggest that we update the recommendation? It is one of approval to no objections or adverse comments from Kilverstone Parish Council. Can I please suggest that we add that are not already covered in the officer report? If Chairman, you're willing, and that way, because if they just object with no reasons, then in theory we'd have to come back to committee. But you know, if they object with reasons that we haven't covered, then we'll need to come back to committee. But if they object with reasons that are covered in the officer report that members are agreeing today that are acceptable, it would be a waste of your time, Chairman, and the members' time to bring it back without that.
Yes, I fully agree. Thank you. Julie, can you take that roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Attewell?
For.
Councillor Bowes?
For.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Dale?
For.
Councillor Digan?
For.
Councillor Gilbert?
For.
Councillor Martin?
For.
Councillor Kittle-Morris?
For.
And Councillor Peter Wilkinson?
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So this item is approved. Thank you very much. Could we get Councillor Kybird back in the room, please?
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
There he is. Thank you. So we're moving on, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, I'm talking to myself then. I don't know what happened there. Thank you. So we're going to Yaxham now. We have some guests joining us. We have Chris Cooves. Yes, I can see Chris Cooves. Maggie Oshaw. Yes, I can see her. Richard Wadcote. Connected to audio, I think this is Mr. Wadcote. Phil Atkinson. Yep, I can see Phil Atkinson. Councillor Martin, I can see Councillor Martin, and Councillor Paul Clausen.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Paul sends his apologies. He was due to be here, but he's at a GP's appointment. And he's given me words that he's asked me to speak on his behalf as we're sharing the 3 minutes. Or we were sharing the 3 minutes.
Thank you. That's fine. Someone else had a hand up. Was that you, Rebecca?
To convey what Councillor Martin just conveyed.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So members, we're on 3OB 2020-0021OB at Yaxham. And the presentation again by Chris Hobson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you see the presentation before you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, carry on.
So we've got item 9C at Yaxham, land north of Norwich Road, pages 63 to 69 of the main report. We've also had 3 further objections from the local community. They're outlined in the supplementary report. So this application relates to an outline scheme that was allowed to appeal in 2018, and the application site has since obtained reserved matters consent earlier this year. The proposals before you seek to amend the section 106 agreement, in particular in relation to the affordable housing provision and timescales for its delivery on site. So the proposals firstly include a reduction to 25% affordable housing on site. That's in line with the local plan requirements. Policy HOU 7, the proposals also include the pushback in the delivery of on-site affordable housing. So rather than as currently set out in the legal agreement, all the affordable housing at 40% occupation, this would be broken down to half of the affordable housing at that full 40% trigger, and the remaining half at the occupation of 60% occupation on site. So this application, we've received a number of objections from the local community. We've also received objections from the parish council and neighbourhood plan group for Yaxham. The objections raised are set out in the report. The objections are noted. However, the members have seen others, other schemes in this regard that have sought to reduce the affordable provision down to 25% in line with the updated, the new adopted local plan requirements. So in terms of the application before you, the proposals are now in line with what is required in the adopted local plan, which is underpinned by the SIL viability assessment undertaken as part of the local plan evidence base. It is acknowledged that when the appeal decision was made by the inspector that they referred to affordable housing, they highlighted that there was value in providing the affordable housing on site. In this regard, apologies, I'll through the site in more detail in a moment. In terms of the provision of on-site affordable housing, that was viewed, as I said, as a value. Now, in his concluding remarks, he did highlight 40% affordable provision, but that was in the context of a delivery of 25 homes in the short term, and also in the backdrop and the contribution made to the lack of the housing supply, 5-year housing supply at the time. Now, in that regard, it's not our view that that was the sole reason for the permission being granted by the inspector. It was more of a view in the round when looking at the scheme as a whole. In terms of the wider context, as mentioned, the proposals, in our view, would still provide the short-term delivery of 25 houses. The scheme would bring forward those houses in accordance with the requirements of the local plan, as we are today. In terms of, as mentioned, we now have a detailed site layout. So that was the indicative site layout at outline. As mentioned, the reserve matters permission was granted earlier this year, and that's before you. And there are the proposals before you in terms of the amendments to the affordable housing provision. In light of the above, the application for the amendments to the affordable housing obligations are recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Our first speaker is Chris Coves of the Parish Council. Sorry, I'm trying to find it on my screen. Yes, down there. Mr. Coves, are you chairman or vice chairman or just a standing member?
I'm just a standing member of the Parish Council.
That's fine, no problem. Okay, so you have 3 minutes, okay?
Yep, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Chris Coos, a member of Yaxham Parish Council. Yaxham is a small village surrounded by open countryside that enhances its rural character. This proposed development of 25 new homes is a significant increase above the 5% growth required under HOU 4 and further urbanises the look of our village. Yaxham does not have a shop, a post office, a pub or local restaurant, as this recently closed with the loss of 30 local jobs, and the local school is full to capacity. 25 homes also is going to further increase the traffic in the village. By on average 5 movements per household per day, that's an increase of 125 movements, adding to the current 65,000 movements currently recorded on the SAM2 speed awareness camera. Yaxham is not against gradual organic growth within the village. Our neighbourhood plan clearly stipulates this. However, this development does not represent this ethos and clearly does not enhance the look or character of the village. 45 objections against this development have already been posted on the Breckland Planning Portal, which represents more than 10% of the entire parish. The community are aware that the applicant for the site has reduced the provision of 40% affordable housing down to 25% as a means of making more money and reducing the ability for young families to buy homes. This development is outside the settlement boundary for the village and is on agricultural land used for valuable food production. The inspector only agreed to allow this application to go ahead on appeal because of the 40% affordable housing commitment by the developer and because of the lack of a 5-year land supply. If this had not been the case, then this development would have been refused under the old local plan and under the new local plan, HOU 04, because of the significant increase to the village above the 5%. For these issues identified, the clear greed of the developer to make as much money as they can without any provision for the village, the parish council, on behalf of the village of Yaxham, asks that this application be refused by the planning committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Maggie Oshel of the Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. You have 3 minutes also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, members. My name is Maggie Oakser and I'm chairman of the Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. Breckland Council refused this very contentious application twice in 2017, but the planning inspector allowed the appeal in 2018. He noted the district's then lack of a 5-year housing land supply and gave significant weight to the 40% affordable homes obligation and to the prospect of short-term delivery of 25 homes. These were the compelling reasons for his decision to allow the development. 3 other proposals to reduce the affordable housing numbers are referenced by the applicant. You will know them in Banham, Swaffham and Westfield Road, Dereham. But, and very important, none of these applications had the 40% affordable housing obligation specifically stated by a planning inspector as one of the main reasons for approval. This provision made an otherwise unacceptable development, then outside the Yaxham settlement boundary, acceptable. 2 years after the appeal decision, this site is untouched, no other conditions discharged, so where is the promised short-term delivery? And now the applicant is obviously not inclined to accept the planning inspector's judgment on affordable home provision either. And it appears that the applicant now wants to sell this site to an untested developer who is not local and appears to have no history of other developments. As far as the village is concerned, absolutely the only mitigating factor of this development was the prospect of 10 affordable homes, giving more young people the opportunity of a roof over their heads. But there is no new site plan to identify which of the affordable properties are to be ditched, purely to increase developer profit. If a planning inspector wrote that 40% was the correct level of affordable homes on this otherwise unacceptable site, then the village requests the planning committee upholds this judgment and refuses this reduction today as a matter of principle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have Richard Wadcote, please, who's an objector. 3 minutes also, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman, committee. Good afternoon to you. My name is Richard Wadcote. I'm a resident of the village of Yaxham, having lived here with my family for the last 22 years. This application seeks to amend obligations set out in the Section 106 agreement signed at the time of the successful appeal on this site in May 2018. The Section 106 agreement with these obligations was in place throughout the recent Reserved Matters application, which was permitted in mid-May this year, only a month before the application we are now discussing was submitted in mid-June 2020. The key point from this is that the Reserved Matters application was assessed against the new local plan, and despite the local plan policy requirements of 25% affordable homes, the applicant nonetheless retained the 40% obligation and did not seek to vary this or the related trigger point for a proportion of the affordable homes to be built by. The Housing Enabling Officer drew attention to only requiring 25% in a note within his consultation document of 18th December 2019. So the applicant had every opportunity to challenge the 40%. And would have been fully aware in the run-up to a decision on the application of any change in circumstances such as arising from COVID-19, but the applicant did not say a word. Indeed, the officer report for the Reserved Matters application, having noted the 40% obligation, concluded in 3.5, overall, the proposals are therefore considered to provide an acceptable range and mix of housing types, sizes and tenures, and to accord with policies in both the Breckland Local Plan and Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan. And also in 9.1, conditions on the outline permission, including the 40% affordable homes, and those recommended on the Reserved Matters permission would address those outstanding concerns raised by the community. For these reasons, the application is recommended for approval. So the permission was deemed viable by the applicant in mid-May 2020, but not in mid-June 2020. How can this be? There is no viability assessment to seek a reduction to 25% as per NPPF para 57, rather than scribbled unsubstantiated assertions and a letter repeating those same unsubstantiated assertions. Please refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've got Phil Atkinson, please, who's the agent. 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, elected members of the Planning Committee, my name is Philip Atkinson and I'm a Director of LandPro as Planning Consultants. The application before you has been made by the site owner Glaven on behalf of Scarlett's Homes as house builder, purchasers of the Norwich Road Yaxham site. A lot has happened since the grant of outline planning permission for the site in April 2018. On appeal in 2018. And the approval of Scarlett's Homes Reserved Matters submission in May 2020. Despite everything that's happened to the UK economy in recent months, the SME house builder is now ready to start on site and deliver much needed new homes in the village to meet local housing needs. As outlined in the committee report before you, the applicant wishes to, 1, amend the amount of affordable housing being delivered to a level in line with your council's current requirements, and 2, amend the trigger level for delivery of the affordable housing in line with the offer made by Broadland Housing, who will be delivering the new affordable homes. To be absolutely clear, the application has only been made to ensure that the Norwich Road scheme is made viable and is not designed to further enhance an already viable scheme. The scheme is looking to comply in full with the council's new affordable housing target. The new 25% affordable housing requirement was recently set by the Secretary of State on the basis that a higher level would make new housing schemes in the district unviable. And since the Secretary of State formed this view, COVID-19 has subsequently struck, which has resulted in more expensive ways of working, higher rates of development finance, higher materials and labour costs. If this application is refused, the SME builder will be forced to make a new full planning application that can then be determined against the council's new 25% affordable housing requirement. Such an approach and delay is in no one's interest, not least Breckland Council themselves, who are already suffering reduced housing rates in these very difficult times. Such a delay will also take jobs and wages away from the Norfolk-based building contractor EN Suter and its local subcontractors. This application is not about developers profiteering, it's about the guarantee of jobs and housing delivery. One further point I'd like to discuss, the original application was not approved on the basis of an enhanced affordable housing offer, It was granted on the basis of the scheme's compliance with your adopted planning policies at the time of determination and all other relevant issues. This application again seeks to comply in full with the Council's new affordable housing requirement and the same issues that exist today. To conclude, I would state that Scarlett's homes did not cause COVID-19. Nevertheless, they are now at the very real risk of suffering the serious financial effects of this terrible disease. If this application is refused, this SME builder is contracted to purchase an unviable site and make a new full planning application at risk through no fault of its own. As such, the decision by members that will be made in the next few minutes is very serious to Scarlett's and its workforce. They're all counting on the scheme to commence. This is the only scheme that Scarlett's are currently working on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Atkinson. We now have Councillor Ian Martin, please. 3 minutes also.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee, good afternoon. Just as a quick comments on the comments you've just heard, just to repeat what's already been said, the applicant appeared to believe that this site was viable in mid-May and didn't believe it was viable in mid-June. COVID had already hit, it was already clear what was happening. There is nothing that we have seen that substantiates any of the statements that the applicant or their agent have just made as to whether or not the builder would walk away. Nothing at all. So, to bring you back to December last year, committee, you made a stand on the Gladman site in Matshall, very similar to this particular site in many elements. Both were outside their settlement boundaries when decided to appeal, and being allowed an appeal led to them being included within the settlement boundaries in the new local plan. I disagree, I'm afraid, or we disagree, I'm afraid, with the officer's interpretation of the text in the inspector's decisions. Both appeal inspectors' decisions gave significant weight to the contribution to the housing land supply and combined with 40% affordable housing. In Gladman, the inspector said he gave significant weight to the contribution to the market housing supply, and 20 affordable homes additionally weighs significantly. In this appeal, for the Axum case, the inspector said the contribution to the supply of housing of 25 homes, with 40% of those affordable, to which I give significant weight. Both inspector statements are essentially similar. In the Gladman application, you gave as your reason for refusal that it was reasonable to argue that the examiner could have come to a different decision if there had been a significantly lower percentage of affordable homes. The same is true here. The recent Swanton Road decision on a similar issue, but on a designated development site in the local plan, which by definition is deemed to be viable at 25%, was a weaker argument than in this case, and it was only approved by your good selves with the chairman's casting vote. So please uphold the appeal decision on this application, as you did on the Gladman site previously, and refuse this application. And now I have some words from Paul for you, and you will note there's a different style. Paul says, whether we look back, look to the present day, or look forward, the site would fail to get permission unless it was for Breckland's lack of a 5-year land supply. It was only granted on appeal as the inspectorate made much of the 40% affordable housing element. Now the developer is trying to reduce that to 25%. If they had the courage to submit a new application, it could well fail, as Breckland now has a 5-year land supply and Yaxham's neighbourhood plan carries full weight. So Paul asks you now to refuse this application to reduce the affordable housing numbers and trust the planning inspectorate will support its own conclusions on this inappropriate development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think you've done that in front of the bathroom mirror. You're actually 2 minutes 57 seconds, including Mr. Councillor Closon's statements. So well done. Okay, it's open to questions from members. We've got a lot of people who need. Hang on a minute. Let's start with Rebecca, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Chris Hobson, can you just clarify that the site is now in the settlement boundary?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, it is. Can confirm it is within the new adopted local plan. The red line for the settlement goes around the.
Just to clarify, members, it is now in the Yaxham settlement boundary. The Yaxham neighbourhood plan would not override that. It has to be in conjunction with the local plan, and therefore the principle of development would therefore be established on this site. I would therefore remind members that your current policy requirement under House 7 is for 25% affordable housing, which is obviously the level that the applicant wishes to bring it down to. And the only significant material change in policy Yes, we do have a 5-year housing land supply, but bringing it within the settlement boundary establishes the principle for development in this location, and therefore, you know, it's not a significant harm consideration. It would be in the settlement boundary. House 7 would allow for 25% affordable housing, and the other material consideration, which has changed since the earlier core strategy, would be the provision of open space, which is accounted for in the Section 106 agreement, which requires the provision of open space to be in accordance with current policy requirements. So just to clarify that point, if I may, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Clark, followed by Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm familiar with the all the applications in the area, having sort of got friends in Mattershaw, and I also went to the both the appeal sort of hearings relation to the Gladman site. So my sort of views and interests are in the area are well known. I'm looking on this occasion, it may be that he wishes to give the advice later on after further questions of members, but I'd be grateful for the opinion of our legal representative, Mike Horn, in terms of how far members need to take into account the views of the inspector who allowed this on appeal, both in relation to the 40%, but also whilst we're looking at this application on merit, in similar applications, Mr. Horn's given us advice on the likelihood of an appeal succeeding or not. So I'd be grateful for some further guidance if he's able to give it. And obviously Rebecca may wish to add in as well. Thank you.
Okay, should we take Rebecca first, please, and then I'll take Mike. Rebecca.
All I was going to add is that you need to look at the wording of the inspector and take it in the round. So he said in the appeal statement, and he absolutely did mention affordable housing, but he said balanced against his concerns about the impact on the character of the area is the contribution to the supply of housing of up to 25 homes with 40% of those affordable to be delivered in the short term, to which I have given significant weight. It's a complete sentence. It's not two sentences. At the time, the policy requirement was for 40% affordable housing. You cannot give significant weight to something that is policy compliant. You give that due weight. Because it's policy compliant at that time. What he's given significant weight to is the delivery of 25% affordable housing, for which it is policy compliant with regard to affordable housing. And therefore, given that we didn't have a 5-year housing land supply at the time, he's given it in the round significant weight, which is your test when you need to allow for significant weight to be given to outweigh the supply of housing. So he's given that significant weight. With regards to the merits of appeal, we've discussed this on a number of occasions. Your policy does require 25% affordable housing, and your inspector's report, to which I can quote at paragraph 179, which was into the local plan, discusses the reduction of affordable housing at 25%. And given that the plan wide viability assessment that this council submitted to the inspector, the inspector says, I consider 25% to be appropriate and robust figure, and requirements for any further than 25% is likely to make housing schemes unviable, and that they're only required to submit a viability assessment if we're going below the 25% as required by that policy. So I would say, and Mike obviously may have, is we would be putting the council at significant risk if we were to require a new application, which could be appealed, to require any more than 25% affordable housing.
Thanks, Rebecca. Mike, would you like to come in now or at the end?
I'll come in at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Wilkinson and then Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, planning officer, has the district valuer been asked for any consultation since 2019, and has Breckland Housing management has been consulted on the reduction, what might happen? And can I just say as well that really members and the public, we did have all these meetings with our local plan over the last 4 or 5 years, and we did say that 40% was never viable. That's why the 25% was brought in at the same time. So just putting that out there really. But Chris, could you answer those 2 questions, please?
Yeah, of course. No, we haven't sought the views of the district valuer. There isn't a site-specific development appraisal submitted with this application. It's been submitted, obviously in light of changes to the adopted local plan, the requirements within that, and you know, we would only generally seek the advice of the district valuer or a viability expert should we have a report with respect to that. In terms of the affordable housing elements, yeah, the housing enabler has been consulted. The comments are there in the committee report. There's a couple of elements to the changes, so he's noted that the changes in terms of triggers would be reasonable in the circumstances, and he's highlighted that there'd be no objections subject to affordable housing not being given the reason for approval. So as Becky and myself have mentioned previously, in terms of the context of the decision, I don't necessarily need to go over that a 3rd time. Hope that's sufficient.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I did see that now. I did miss that the first time round, the enabling reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I seem to remember that historically, prior to the adoption of the local plan in November last year, the viability assessments reduced our LDF 40% affordable to about 23%. So we were running below 25% prior to the adoption of the local plan. I note that now this site is within the settlement boundary, and I think in 1.6 of the officer's report, it does say that if should this application be withdrawn and another one put in, the likelihood is, contrary to what Councillor Martin said, it's likely to be approved because it's within the settlement boundary, and it would come back with a 25% affordable housing limit on it. I also note that the latest local planning guidance note said local authorities should take a pragmatic and proactive, proportionate approval approach to Section 106 planning obligations during this period. And I think that is also in the report. And actually, I hate to disappoint the members who have the parish council and others that have talked against this particular application to reduce the obligation, but I was going to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Well, I've got Councillor Bowes, and could I also ask Councillor Bowes if she's heard most of the things? I know you had a problem with your sound.
Yes, I have. I just didn't hear all of what I think Harry was saying, but I've heard all the officer presentation, everything.
Yeah, that's fine then. You don't really have to worry too much about what Harry says, so carry on.
Just a small point. Councillor Coos from the Parish Council implied that the only restaurant in Yaxham had closed, but is that correct? Because I understand there's a very popular and a successful Indian restaurant running in Yaxham.
Mr. Coos, you're resident. Could you reply? Is the Indian restaurant still open?
That is correct. Yes, I'm referring to Yaxham Waters.
Yaxham Waters one, yeah. Yaxham Waters is closed, has it now? Or
it has, yes.
Oh, I didn't realise that. That's something new every day. Is it to change of ownership, or just closed temporarily, or closed down permanently?
As far as we're aware, it's closed permanently with the loss of 30 jobs.
Oh, Goodness gracious me. Okay, there we go, Councillor Bowes. That's been answered. Do we have any further questions from members? Councillor Attwell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Reluctantly, I have to agree with all the comments that Councillor Kittle-Morris stated a moment ago. You'll know that I fought valiantly regarding other applications like the one in Dereham, and what we were told was that basically the council could suffer liability in terms of monetary loss if it was to lose an appeal, which it was probably likely to do. And on that basis, looking at this and the fact that this is within the settlement boundary, we've had it confirmed, and the fact that the applicant could submit a whole new application, there's a good chance that they would probably get permission for that application based on 25 homes. Reluctantly, very reluctantly, I'm going to have to support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Horn, would you like to finalise, please?
Yes, please. Two things. Bearing in mind that Councillor Bowes missed what Councillor Clark asked and what was said in response, I think that it is very important that we should go over that before we take any vote, so there can't be any allegation that any member has missed anything that has been discussed. And secondly, can I please emphasize something that has been said recently, that there is a case law that states that the prospects of success or otherwise in an application for costs against a local planning authority at a subsequent public inquiry is not to be taken as a determining factor in your considerations of an application. You must consider it on its own merits and not give undue weight to the prospects of success and or the likelihood of an application being successful for costs against the council.
Thanks for that, Mr. Horn. Councillor Clark, for the sake of Councillor Bowes, would you just try and summarise what you asked and the response, please?
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear. Yes, well, I did ask Mr. Horn was how far the appeal inspector's decision to allow the 25 homes originally in Yaxham to go ahead, how far was material weight given to the, the 40% and the advice that he would give. And we also heard both from Rebecca, who read out the full quotation from the inspector and pointing out it was about the delivery of the material factor was the delivery of homes as opposed to simply relying on the 40%. That was my understanding from what Rebecca was saying. Obviously, it's helpful what Mr. Horn has just said. We can't sort of prejudge what may or may not happen dependent on our decision in this or any other application, because they're done precisely on its merits. The only question for me, and as well as, and I agree with Councillor Attwell on the previous applications and robust position that we took on those, although that was lost on Swanton Road, is the application has been approved to actually build 25 there. There'd be a loss of 4 potential affordable houses if they were allowed 25%. Things have changed in terms of it being within the settlement boundary, and I'm probably, and so looking at it on its merits, I would probably be inclined to reluctantly go with the view of Councillor Attwell. This is looking at it on its merits rather than regarding the success or otherwise of any appeal should it go against the applicant. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, can I May I just summarise that by saying that I think that it is reasonable for members to give considerable weight to the fact that if this was refused now and an application was made now, then the figure would be 25% and not 40%. And I think that that is a factor that it is perfectly reasonable for members to have in the forefront of their minds.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bowes, could I just confirm that you're happy with the presentation again from Councillor Clark and Mr. Horn?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Yeah, thanks for indulging, Mr. Chairman. Just referring to our colleague, Councillor Kittle-Morris's observations. Breckland has, this last 5 years, always achieved 6% affordable housing above the national average. Just for information, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So no further questions. Could I just confirm that all members have heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Could have show of thumbs, please, that you've all heard it. Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, then. So on this one, with regards to 3OB 2020-0021 OB at Yaxham Land north of Norwich Road, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Julie, could I have a roll call for the decision, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Attewell.
For.
Councillor Bowes.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Chapman-Allen.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For, reluctantly, thank you.
Councillor Dale.
For.
Councillor Digan.
For.
Councillor Gilbert.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Martin.
Same, reluctantly for.
Councillor Kybird.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Kittle-Morris.
For.
And Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you. This unanimously that been decided by the panel that this item is approved. Thank you for the members of the public, etc., who have attended this one. Also, I'm sorry about the slight delay. We had some hold-ups with communication problems with the previous application. But thank you anyway. We'll say goodbye to you. So we move on to our next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We've got Hugh Coggles in the room as well. Yep, so there we are, members. We're moving on to a TPO item that is at Kenning Hall, Beavers Lodge, East Church Street. Over to you, please, Hugh.
Right, okay. I'm assuming you can all hear me.
We can.
Yeah. Becky, do you do the PowerPoint for me, or is that okay?
Which Becky?
Well, if you say please, because she's very temperamental.
Sorry, yeah, could someone, I mean, there's a PowerPoint to put up with it. I'm not sure how I do that from here, but if someone could just help, that would be great.
I'll do that, 1 second.
Thank you.
Becca, are you all right? Are you?
Right, okay, well, it's like it was just said that there's 2 trees in Kenning Hall, 2 Scots pines. As you all know, there are only native pine trees. I think we've had this discussion before. In the conservation area in Kenning Hall, we received a Section 211 notice to fell both trees. Following the receipt of the notice, I went out, assessed the trees, deemed them to be of high amenity value as they are on the frontage of the site near to the road. Clearly visible, early mature trees with no significant defects and quite a significant lifespan ahead of them. So after assessing the trees and consulting with Breckland District Council, we decided to serve a TPO on both trees. The owner of the trees has objected And I have received one email from the parish council saying that they support the objection, although they did describe them as 2 fir trees. So I'm not sure if they sort of recognise that they were indeed Scots pines. So as always with these TPO application or objections, we have 2 options: either confirm the order, which would mean that the trees remain protected, or allow the order to lapse, which would allow the objector to fell both trees. Yeah, very quickly, Becky's just showing the site plan. As you can see, the 2 trees there at the front of the site near to the road. There's a view of them from the road. And I think there's one more yet again from the road. They're approximately, I mean, the person objecting has said that they have problems with falling needles and falling cones. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to stop that on pine trees. And proximity to building, I measured it, I think they're approximately 10 to 12 meters away from the dwelling. So I would say that's probably an acceptable distance. And I think people tend to park their cars on the little gravel driveway along there, so there's possibility of little dead bits falling off and landing on the cars. But as you know, the preservation order doesn't prevent the management of the trees, and no application is required to remove dead wood from trees. That can be done as and whenever the owner wants to. So that's it really. Like I said, we either confirm the order or allow both trees to be removed.
Okay, thank you.
Who
could I just ask, maintenance of the trees, would that include obviously professionally a reduction in the height to a degree? And the fullness of them?
No, I wouldn't. If the TPO was confirmed, I wouldn't support a height reduction. No, it's generally quite damaging to pine trees. You don't really want to be removing the central leader. It tends to cause more problems than it solves. So pruning works to pine trees is fairly limited, but obviously any works for safety reasons would be approved.
Okay, but we are talking about well, I'll call it a pine tree, not a fir tree, just to keep you happy. But obviously it's an evergreen tree, so it's never going to be without its coverage.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Chapman, Allen, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Here I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that pine lines and Scotch pines are the most familiar and iconic features of the Brex landscape. Indeed, when I lived in Thetford, I had a row of them at the back of my garden. And even in the highest winds, they actually didn't lose or drop any branches, but like oak trees who drop acorns, they do drop pines. I noticed that the applicant says we would possibly not have bought this house if we'd known the trees would be protected. Is this not a case of caveat emptor, buyer beware? I thought that's what we paid a conveyancer or a solicitor for. It seems a shame that they didn't get that advice at the time. I notice, and I may be wrong, that it changed hands in October 2019, but by February 2000, they'd requested that these trees be removed. When I visited the site, I couldn't gain any evidence locally, speaking to people, about a problem with branches dropping on cars. Right? I might have spoken to the wrong people. I'm sorry to hear that the trees blocked the householder's light. Once again, when I was looking at them, they are substantially tall and quite a way away from the property. And as you quite rightly said, if this TPO is approved, it doesn't stop the householders using an approved tree surgeon to tidy up any branches which are felt to be dead. But the TPO will protect them from being felled. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a question to Mr. Coggles, please. These trees, I take it, are in a conservation area. Therefore, if they are bigger than, I think it's 85 centimetres diameter, a metre above the ground, they are protected as a conservation tree, are they not?
Yeah, they are. It's actually much smaller than that. So anything with a diameter of 7.5 centimetres or more requires an application. The thing is, if we receive works to trees in a conservation area is slightly different from work to trees with a preservation order on. The council only has two choices. We either say, yes, you can do what you've notified us you want to do, or we serve a preservation order. So in this instance, if someone says we want to fell the trees, we can't say, oh no, we won't let you fell them, but we will let you prune them. That's not the way it works. We have to, we're obliged to serve a preservation order. And just in response to Councillor Chapman-Allen's points about no evidence of branches falling, I couldn't see where any significant branches had split or come away from the tree. I should imagine it's just small diameter dead bits that are falling out of the trees.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, this is covered. So can I confirm that all members have heard the application in full before the vote is taken? Thank you. Councillor Attwell, yes. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So with regards to this 2 trees in Kenning Hall, our Tree and Countryside Officer's recommendation is that we retain the tree preservation order upon these 2 trees. So can I have a roll call, please, Julie, that people approve the recommendation?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Attwell?
For.
Councillor Bowes?
For.
Councillor Chapman-Allen?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Dale?
For.
Councillor Digan?
For.
Councillor Gilbert?
For.
Councillor Martin?
For.
Councillor Kybird?
For the recommendation.
Councillor Kittle-Morris?
For.
Councillor Wilkinson?
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Yep, that's unanimous. So with regards to this, it's approved that we retain the tree preservation order. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Hugh.
Thanks,
We'll get on with
everyone.
something.
Thank you very much.
We'll prune something. Okay,
Okay.
Item 11 is applications determined by Executive Director of Place. Those are there for your information. And number 12 is appeals summary, also for your information. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just refer to, for members' attention, to appeal number 2 in the list of appeal summary, which is in my home village. I'm concerned that the inspector reduced the 2.4 metre setback for visibility display to 2 metres, allowing for the bonnet of a car to go out into the oncoming traffic and in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. And the speed, I think the speed through that particular place is 30 miles an hour, and it's been recorded at 26 miles an hour point something one way and 30.7 the other. So I think it's kind of cutting corners, allowing things which actually shouldn't be. I think members should be aware of that when they make sure that there are good visibility displays in their villages when they look at their planning applications.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's a warning to all members. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attendance and also to our substitutes who've stepped in to cover a couple of members who couldn't be with us. And with that, I close this meeting. Thank you very much.